talent is, I think, my least favorite word in the English language. Musicians are so used to hearing, "You're so talented," right? We hear it all the time. And I don't by any means reproach any of you for this terminology, because we are immersed in a culture that glorifies perhaps innate ability over what is often brutally hard work to achieve excellence in any field. And I have taken the many compliments you've bestowed upon me regarding talent to heart. I appreciate them for what they are. But what if I told you that there's not a thing you've ever seen me do in here, musically, whether it's violin playing, standing at the podium, conducting the choir, that you could not do as well? And I mean that. I know you think I'm crazy. Now, I don't deny the potency of a musical upbringing. I had the best. And I remember one particular story that came to mind as I was thinking about this morning. When I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, coming back from Sunday school here, we were driving just around the sharp bend north of here on South Valley Forge Road, the big houses on the hill, and we're playing a game in the car that we often would. The classical radio station is playing. Name the key, the era, and a probable composer. And if memory serves, it was, in that instance, G minor, Baroque, and I probably guessed Bach or Handel because the breadth of my Baroque composer knowledge at 6 or 7 years old was not quite what it is today. But I present to you a dichotomy because I would call that great fortune and not talent. That was my privilege. About 15 years ago, it was early 2010, I met a 75-year-old man, an ex-cop, in an Irish pub, Kildare's, where I used to lead Irish music sessions in Westchester. His name is Michael, and he was in love with the classical violin. He always wanted to play, but could barely scratch out a recognizable tune. His brother was a very good Irish fiddler, but Michael loved Mozart and Vivaldi and Fritz Kreisler. And so he approached me about teaching him some lessons. So week after week, we would get together and I would impart to him what wisdom I could about good practice etiquette and violin technique and musicianship. And Michael just loved to play. He played and played constantly. He had a true passion for it. 5 years later, by the time he was 80 years old, Michael was playing major concertos. Mozart, G major, D major, Wieniawski, D minor. We had actually just begun Mendelssohn, E minor, if you can believe it, before he decided, you know what, I'm 80, I'm as good as I want to be, I'm going to pursue some other passions. And I suspect that's what he's still doing. He's celebrating his 90th birthday later this month. I just got the invitation. But I ask you, was Michael somehow supremely talented that as a 75-year-old he could just learn to play the violin so well in 5 years? Or did he just love it? Because musical aptitude is a process. It's not some nebulous ability inherent to some, but not all of us. Why are there 9-year-olds, for example, who stand in front of a symphony orchestra playing Paganini? I mean, I would argue they've been deprived of their childhood at that point. But the point is they've not been here on this earth that long. There is only so much time you could have spent. And violin playing, as you can see, it's not something that we just come into being able to do. It's a weird thing. Playing instruments is kind of an abstract thing. There's a process. These 9-year-olds have followed a process, and they've put in the time. I, for the past almost 30 years now, have followed a process and put in the time as a violinist. Michael followed a process and put in the time for those 5 years. And it's probably one of my favorite things about music, because you can just decide how good you want to be and become that. In how many other disciplines is that the case? If I decided that I wanted to swim like Michael Phelps, sorry, I'm 5'10", my shoulders are barely broader than my waist. It's not going to happen. I don't have the physiology for it. If I wanted to be rich like Elon Musk, impossible, because as we all know, you can't become a billionaire through hard work, right? It doesn't happen that way. I'm not the heir of an apartheid emerald mine, and I'm also not a sociopath. It ain't gonna happen. But the wonderful thing about music is that you can be whatever you want to be. You can be as good as you want to be. It is a matter of how much time and how much love for it that you have. Now, I know what stops a lot of you from participating in music, because we talk about it all the time. And it's the second thing I don't like about this word talent, because the notion of talent itself is a barricade. It's this impossible identity. Oh, I'm not talented. Oh, I had a fourth grade choir director who told me I was tone deaf. Therefore, I can't sing in the choir. Nonsense. It's musical, educational malpractice. And our society is actually starting to appreciate now, slowly, that we all have different styles and paces of learning. So I'm vexed by the fact that we still clutch to this idea that music is any different. And this whole misconception leads to a certain toxic perfectionism, I think. And it renders the joy of music unreachable to so many artists, and music participation utterly inaccessible to the rest of us. You have to be talented. You have to read music. You have to have attended a conservatory, be classically trained. Can I pick on the choir for a minute? We may or may not have a handful of perfectionists in our ranks. Maybe. It takes one to know one. So for how many of you does this sound familiar? I'm sorry, we have to do that again. The altos are not getting that note. Or, you do know the soprano twos aren't singing this at all, right? I do know. It's what you pay me to do. But that's not the point. I mean, not that it has to be at the expense of excellence and accuracy, but I would argue that perfectionism may be the antithesis of the musical experience. We classical violinists actually struggle with this quite a bit. My beloved childhood violin teacher, Mr. Pinnell, used to say to me, as he did often, the first time I was maybe 8 years old, he says, practice makes, and he points to me, and 8-year-old David says, perfect, wrong. Practice makes progress. But it wasn't to absolve me of the notion that perfection was possible. It was more to say, violinist, you'll appreciate this, perfection is something for which we must strive till our dying breath, though we will never achieve it. Violin playing is hard enough. We don't need to impose that upon what we're doing. And it's harder than, frankly, most of the things I've done in my life. It's harder than my other vocations in strength training or even politics, running for office. And it reminds me because I actually had a political campaign advisor I worked with a number of years ago who observed correctly my type A perfectionist, micromanagement-oriented personality and said, you know, David, sometimes good enough is good enough. Some of you have heard this before, yes? Oh, I literally repeat these words out loud to myself several times a week because I need to hear it. I need to think about it. And I am not suggesting that as musicians we should not strive for accuracy or excellence. I still want to be the world's greatest violinist. It's my toxic personality trait. I still want to be the world's greatest composer. I still want the MLUC choir to sound like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. But it's just not the point. That's not the objective. And this brings me to the most powerful lesson that I've learned in my tenure now as music director here at MLUC, which is that music is about joy, of course, but the more we can share that joy, the stronger our whole community will be. The better off we'll be as Unitarian Universalist stewards of love in the world. Perfectionism is not the point, but participation. I speak to you of the myths of talent and the perfect because I believe that music truly is for all of us. If you have ever felt transformed by listening to music, we talked about this a lot last year on Music Sunday, but for whatever reason have thus far restricted yourselves from the participation process, this is my appeal. Know that you have music to contribute because you have joy. And especially when that joy is hardest to find, whether because of personal strife or the nightmarish state of our fascistic federal government, that joy, music will unlock that joy for you and allow you to proliferate that joy to every life that you touch. And so I often remind the choir, sing strong and wrong. Yeah, right? And yet, I suspect this morning you will believe that they kind of sound something like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, because we're not chasing perfection, but embracing participation. We are singing for the joy of it. We are singing with passion. As Beethoven is said to have quoted, to play a wrong note is insignificant. Some of you have heard this before. But to play without passion is inexcusable. And if we're serious about transforming lives here at MLUC, let us ask ourselves, how might we free our music from the confines of self-doubt and perfectionism and the myths of talent? Because music is joy incarnate, and I believe that we are all musicians.